You have been a persistent Harrow councillor for many years, and that has been irrespective of the political standing of your political party. What is the secret of your success?
I've certainly been persistent. I've been a councillor for 26 out of the past 30 years, and the only time I wasn't a councillor was when I had a slight falling out with the returning officer, and he ejected all the Liberal Democrat nominations in 2002. I think that I do live in my ward. I regularly call on people, I keep in touch, and I call regularly on people taking up their problems and try and deal with them.
Being a councillor for such a long time and being active in the community, Harrow has a changing characteristic. How do you see Harrow now?
When I first became a councillor in 1986, Harrow was pretty much a white borough with a touch of Gujarati, but that's no longer the case. Harrow is very mixed, ethnically, religiously, and indeed it's one of the boroughs, I believe, where the ethnic minority population are actually in a majority. I believe that I'm doing my best for all the people that contact me and in my ward, and my role has changed over the years just as much as my dealing with people that I find. Even going down a street these days, you'll see people from all kinds of nationalities, from English, Gujarati, in Rayners Lane, an awful lot of Tamils.
How do you see changes in administrations over the years?
Well, the most significant change was the change from committee government to the change to cabinet government, which occurred about the year 2000. The council used to operate through various committees, but thanks to the decision by the Labour government, the first Blair government, they decided that cabinet government should operate, and as opposed to all councillors having a role in decision making through the committees, it came down to the 10 members of the council who are cabinet members, who pretty much take the lion's share of the decisions. The constitution of the council now says that pretty much everything is reserved to cabinet, and the only decisions to the council as a whole are things like the budget and such like.
So given that working situation, what is really the effectiveness of the opposition? Say, for example, the main opposition. What is that they do?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think that the main opposition in Harrow is particularly ineffective. The Conservative group is led by someone who makes an awful lot of noise and is basically opposing things for the purpose of opposing them. There's no constructive dialogue between the parties in Harrow at the moment, and there hasn't been since 2010.
What do you think is working well, and what do you think is not working well?
I think that the council works well when it is united and when it sets out a vision, but it's not working well because the main opposition group does not provide a constructive opposition. And I think also the council doesn't work well in as much as that there are now the customer care aspects of the council have taken a downward nosedive over the past couple of years. It used to be possible for people to get through to the council with their individual complaints. Now people tell me on a regular basis that they're hanging on the phone for ages. They don't get a response. When officers answer the phone, they say, "Oh, that's not my job. I'm not going to answer your call." That's a very bad move, and I think it's only really happened in the past 2 or 3 years. So the council could do a lot better in that area. Also, the council have made cuts, no doubt caused by central government, in which they have meant that they have cut down on a lot of the services that people regularly get in touch. The brown bins, which now people have to pay for if they want, is perhaps the best example of this. But also there have been cuts in the cleansing budget in recent years, some of them reversed in the budget making meeting of February, but the trend is nevertheless again downward.
Do you think the chief executive post is a good investment?
Yes. I think the present incumbent has worked very well for Harrow. The only problem is that it's very clear that the main opposition group has no confidence in him. But even when he left Harrow for the year that he did, when the independent Labour group caused a lot of political upsets, it's very clear that there was effectively a chief executive. They just didn't call him that. I think he was called the interim monitoring officer or something like that. And but he effectively there was a chief executive, and there always has been.
Looking at the politics nationally, there are some who say that politics have changed drastically, in that last few elections we have seen a lot of negative campaigns, scaremongering, and creating some fear in people's mind. Do you tend to agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. That's not an old phenomenon. That's not a new phenomenon. If you look at the elections that have occurred in the past, in 1906 the Tory government was swept out in favour of a Liberal government because people were voting against what the Tories had done, not that they were necessarily voting for what the Liberals were doing. Again in 1945, another watershed election, people were tired with the Conservatives and they voted in Labour. And again in 1997, a watershed election, after the antics of the John Major years and the end of Mrs Thatcher, people voted for Blair to make a new chance. And that will occur again at some stage in the future. People tend to vote against things rather than voting for things.